Today's OTR, when a so-called disease of the weak hits the strong.
I was in a very low place in my life.
Jordan Matechuk, his story and why it could save your life or someone you know.
Off the Record with Michael Landsberg. Brought to you by the Keg Steakhouse and Bar. For great steaks, good friends. See you tonight.
I suffer from a mental illness. Words you don't hear people say very often because we still live in a world where mental illness, depression in particular, is seen as a weakness, not an illness. Let's explore that. In studio, Dr. David Goldblum, Senior Medical Advisor, CAMH, and the Chair of Mental Health Commission of Canada. Great to see you.
Likewise.
And in CTV Winnipeg, Bombers, Jordan Matechuk, and fellow depression sufferer. Good to see you.
You too, Michael and Goldblum.
All right. I love the way you used your last name, Goldblum, like we're in the locker room, which is what we want to talk about. My first question for you, Dr. Goldblum, is my depression and Jordan's depression. Is this our fault? Is this our weakness?
Depression is nobody's fault. Depression is an illness. Plain and simple. You wouldn't be asking me that question about asthma or diabetes or lung disease.
Perfect. Jordan, let's pick up your story. From Yorkton, Saskatchewan. You had been with the Ticats, long snapper, between 2008, 2010, did a great job. Then you're on your way to training camp May of last year, and what happened?
I was in a very low place in my life, and I made a wrong turn, and I ended up getting in trouble, and it made me realize what was going on in my life when I hit rock bottom like that. And
rock bottom for you
Winnipeg's
was...
given me up to.
You were caught with anabolic steroids and marijuana. You were sentenced to 90 days in jail. You spent 60 days in jail, which I'm sure gave you lots of time, unfortunately, to reflect on your situation. And your situation was what? You were making reference to it.
Yeah, I was sitting in the jail cell and talking to my partner on the phone and my agent on the phone. It was made it realize that going off my medication like I did made me make some choices in my life that I shouldn't have.
So let's talk about...
But I'm able to realize from that.
Let's talk about your past. When were you diagnosed with depression?
2.5 years ago, I was diagnosed with it, and recently this summer I've been working with a doctor here in the city that we're getting some real good results, and I feel real good. I'm real happy with life right now and the direction I'm in.
Jordan, can I ask you something? You said a moment ago you went off your medication, and that, in retrospect, looking back now, that doesn't seem like it was a good idea. Had medication been helpful to you?
You know, I just looked at it in a sign of weakness as being a professional athlete, like you guys said too earlier, that as being a professional athlete, you can't show weakness physically or mentally, and I was suffering, and I tried to use a coping mechanism, and it tore apart my life, but now I got life back on track, and it's a good feeling to have a second chance.
So you get the chance now, as the doctor does, but I mean, when the doctor talks about it, it's different than when you talk about it, because you're living it. You get the chance now to tell us, do you feel weak? Do people look at you as you're weak? Because that was your fear before you came out.
Yeah, it was a stigma, but after seeing what happened in the NHL last summer while I was sitting at the farm waiting for my sentencing, a lot was going on, and I felt, if I was able to talk about it and be able to bring it up, and I'm not the only one suffering. There's a lot of guys that were suffering before, but it's tragic what happened to them, and I don't want that to happen to anybody else. An opportunity like this to be able to help people.
Jordan, that's like a perfect
awesome.
example of how we need to, out of tragedies, salvage something good.
Dr. Goldblum, or Goldblum as he would call you.
Goldblum's fine.
What percentage of our population is, do you think, afraid to come out because of the stigma, because they'll be perceived as weak? What percentage of people with depression don't share their depression?
About 50% of people who have depression are afraid to tell anybody else. They're afraid to tell their employer, they're afraid to tell their friends, they're afraid to tell their family. And they find all kinds of ways of saying, oh, I think I'm just worn down, I think I'm exhausted, or I need to spend more time with my family, things like that. All kinds of excuses rather than the plain, unvarnished truth.
Okay, we're going to go to break, and we'll return to talk more about this, but I think it's a pretty definitive statement. If you feel like you're suffering and you can't share, you can. Don't say it like you have something to be ashamed about. Say it loud and clear. This is my illness, and this is what I need, and we need you to return for more OTR in a moment. The next 5 minutes could save someone's life. In our studio, Dr. David Goldblum, Senior Medical Advisor, Cam H, Chair of the Mental Health Commission of Canada, and in Winnipeg, Bombers Jordan Matechuk. Jordan, how much has it changed your life to be able to come on television, to be able to share with your teammates and your family the fact that you suffer from depression?
It's helped me a great deal. It helped me push forward and be able to speak about it and want to give back to the communities here, especially in Winnipeg, for giving me the opportunity. And for me, being able to speak about it, it's a great feeling. Playing football is an amazing feeling, getting a tackle, scoring a touchdown would be a great feeling, but able to give back to a community and the responses I've been getting for just talking about depression it's been a better feeling than any way football playing on the field has given me.
So Jordan, when you shared, first of all, with your teammates, I know you were probably really nervous about that. What was their reaction?
It was open arms. Like, they accepted me, and it was Peter Dykowski from Hamilton gave me a hug like he always does. But it was great. I stayed at Dylan Barker's house there, and they took care of me. They came over during the time of training camp, and Peter bought me an ice cream from McDonald's, and that was his way of saying, "I care about you, buddy."
So the message that you learned from Jordan is the fact that even though you think people around you will judge you a certain way, you may be surprised. Why do you think the stigma still exists? Why do you think the stigma was born? Because as you pointed about diabetes or any other physical ailment, there is no stigma.
Right. I think the reason it persists is that it is tougher to distinguish the illness from the person with mental illnesses than it is with physical illnesses. We don't see the brain. We don't see a bruise on the cortex. You don't see a bandage around somebody's head as one of those external signs that, you know what, something's broken, something needs to heal, something needs to be fixed. But what Jordan said is what you hear from everybody with depression, is how surprised they are at how supportive people will be when they disclose. And I think the reason for that is when you get depressed, nobody thinks as little of you as you do of yourself.
Wow.
And so that it's a revelation when you find out that when you tell people you've been struggling with depression, their response isn't the same kind of negative judgment you impose on yourself.
Jordan, I've experienced much of the same things we're talking about, sharing, and I bet your reaction that you have prompted from people, let me guess, that people have come up to you and said, "You changed my life," or "You saved my life by coming out." Have you heard that?
Yeah, I've heard change. Like, I've gotten my Facebook account, it was open, and like, I can take inbox messages, and I got a lot through Facebook and just through the media. And I spoke in my hometown in Yorkton, Saskatchewan 5 months ago, actually, and it was a great response, and people came up to me that were there at the banquet, and we talked. It was great. I seen a release in their eyes when they talked about it too. It was a great experience.
It's an amazing experience, because what you have inside you, would you agree with this, Dr. Goldblum, is he has the power to show people that it's okay to share. And in particular, he has that power because he's a football player and he lives in this macho world.
Right. Many years ago, like a decade ago, in the States, they had a campaign called Real Men, Real Depression. And it was football players and hockey players and cops and firefighters and soldiers, everybody who fit into that general umbrella term of tough guys. And yet they were open about their experience, and that gives everybody else who's struggling permission to acknowledge.
All right, you stay right there. We're going to say thanks to Jordan Matechuk. Great that you have shared, great that you're feeling better, great that your life is back on track, and great that right now you have given someone the power to come out and share their mental illness. Good for you. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me, Michael, and thanks, Doc, for the great support that you're going to give other people out there that are suffering, and hope everyone can come out and make this mental health awareness real opportunity in Winnipeg.
Good on you, Jordan.
Thank you.